Cellus, what have you been up to lately?
So right now I'm actually spending all my time investing in new artists. Me and my wife got the business Show and Tell, so what we're doing is artist development, we're teaching writing sessions, and so I'm really just preparing the world for this next group of artists that's really gonna take over the game. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on, a lot of behind the scenes work. Just because y'all don't see me tweeting about it or online with social media on everything doesn't mean I'm not working. So I'm working with a lot of new artists right now.
So being that you're working with some artists, are you opposed to signing to a major company, label?
I'm not against record labels. In the grand scheme of things, I think record labels do a lot of great things for artists, but I'm actually an advocate for ownership. So when you think about ownership, what I'm big on is I want to be always in a position where nobody can actually control my narrative and what I have to say to the world. So that means I want to be able to put out the content I want, the music I want, and say what I want without anybody being able to control that. And so I teach my artists and the people that I work with about how they can actually have ownership and their right to say whatever they feel in the music industry.
Can you tell me more about the wealth gap and why you still choose to live in the hood?
Poor people don't have a problem living next to other poor people. What happens is when you get money, all of a sudden now your environment and everything that you know is no longer good enough for you. It's because now you have access to better schools, you got access to better healthcare, restaurants, all those different things. But I think money is actually a tool that's supposed to bring people together and not separate people and tear them apart. So what my philosophy is that as I grow, accumulate, and get more resources, I'm actually trying to give more to the people around me instead of sitting there and use this as a way to say, oh, now I can go over here, let me leave you over here, nah, I don't like how we living. And I think that's honestly what we're supposed to do with our money, and so that motivates me in the way that I live. Next question.
So you're really big on purpose and conviction. Do you think that living that out is really dangerous for you?
Nobody has a problem with the Christian who believes that Jesus died and rose. Crackheads believe crazy things every day and nobody says anything. What they do have a problem with, though, is when the Christian who believes this now has implications for the way that he lives, meaning that he's no longer controlled by the system, means that he's exposing darkness. For example, when I sit here and tell people that the porn industry and the sex industry is actually destroying people's relationships and lives, that's $1 billion industry that's actually losing money because of my message and what I'm saying. When I start telling people about how the film industry and the music industry is actually brainwashing people and trying to get us to live according to this mind-controlled box, then people have a problem because now my faith is being put into action. That's what people have a problem with. Nobody cares that I'm a Christian. They care about what that means for society.
You being an artist that's so deeply rooted and grounded in the church, how do you stay grounded what's going on the streets? So what's going on in the streets right now from your perspective?
We just fighting to survive. Like, when I think about what's going on in the streets, there's so many things where we have a deep desire to be able to share about, what we think about life or to be able to share our deepest feelings. But at that point, when you become that, automatically you become a target. Automatically, it's like, it's kill or be killed. So when I really think about the freedom that I have and the ability that I get to show, like, how I'm creative, how I'm artsy, be able to express these deep emotions and things like that through my music and my craft, I see so many people around me who have the desire to be able to share this, who think about amazing things, who have amazing ideas, but they got to survive. Just like, what I'm saying, it's the way it is, and it's kind of sad, and I try to give people that voice and the opportunity so that they don't have to be stuck in that box.
So you seem relatively quiet on the internet and don't speak much on controversies and culture as they're in the moment. I never see you tweeting any hot takes or anything about the election coming up. You kind of stay out the way and seem to be quietly observing and watching. Why do you stay out of the mix and not comment?
A lot of times it's not that I don't have anything to say, it's just that I realize that everybody is saying too much. So that puts me in a place where it's like, am I adding anything to the narrative? And honestly, I just feel like a lot of people hide behind the screen. A lot of people think that because they're on Twitter tweeting about these certain things, that equates to action. I'd rather be out here actually doing the things that people are tweeting about than sitting here behind a screen. And I also feel like growing up, I remember a time where we actually went out and confronted people that we had problems with. And people nowadays, like when I was in high school, North Cobb High School, if somebody said something about my sister, I went and saw them. And I just feel like nowadays the culture isn't really about that. And I want to bring that back because when I look at Jesus and the disciples, if somebody did something, they were being opposed to their face. And I just think that's faithful to the culture.
As an artist that started doing music at 8 years old and being in your 20s, you're not technically a young or old. What do you think is the big difference you see between the generations? as an artist now?
I'm technically not a young artist anymore, but I'm not an old artist either. So I sit in this weird space between two generations. I can connect to the lyricism. I can connect to like the pioneers, the hip hop. But then I also can look at like the young artists that are doing real artsy, creative, not so lyrical things and still respect them without knocking what they're doing. And I feel like that puts me in a unique place with how I create art and how my art is received. And it's really kind of a cool mix to be in as far as a purveyor of the hip hop culture.
What is your philosophy behind connecting to the hood and the people who want nothing to do with Jesus or the church?
I think it's very apparent when you see Christian artists that don't have any non-Christian friends, like that stay in their church. But we can tell through your music, we can tell through everything you're talking about. And for me, you know, my philosophy has always been the same. It's always been relationship. I was at Rikers Island, and I remember going in there talking to one of my mentees. He had no desire to hear anything about my faith, Jesus, anything like that. But what it was a one-on-one conversation where we started talking about his life in the streets, and I started just name dropping certain people, and we knew the same people, and next thing I know, he's now open to what I have to share. And so I think so much of how we connect people is relationship. It's not formula. And I think it's just apparent that a lot of people who are doing Christian music don't really have any real street friends.
So what's your relationship with drugs and alcohol? Do you drink?
Last time I got drunk, it was crazy situation, legit. Threw up all over myself, lost my gold grill. But honestly, the crazy thing, the reason why I don't drink now is just because I feel like where the Lord is taking me, I just want to be aware. I just feel like I don't necessarily need that in my life and in my system. But I don't have no problem with people who want to drink or do drugs. I honestly feel like God, in his goodness, he takes us to where he wants us to be in his timing. And so I don't sit here and push on people that they shouldn't drink, they shouldn't smoke. I just sit here and say, hey, in your walk with God, he'll take you where he needs you to be, and just follow him.
So the big election's coming up. How are you deciding who to vote for?
Really important election coming up. So many different things that we have to consider. And honestly, I'm going into it having a hard time because I don't agree 100% with either one of the candidates. And I feel like that's kind of how the kingdom is. The kingdom is dynamic. We're not always going to 100% fit our ideologies into the box of one candidate. But what that means is that I have to prioritize my values in a way that makes me figure out what is most important in this election. And so I honestly am looking at things around me. I'm looking at the problems in my community. When I walk outside my crib, what do I see the most? Who needs the most help? And I'm really looking at ways of how I can actually put myself on the line so that other people's lives can be better. So if that means I got to give up something, I'm willing to vote that way. So that's kind of how I'm playing it.